Hello and welcome to Sociology. Today we're going to talk about the Introduction to Human Rights Perspective in Social Constructions. So what is a social problem? Social problems are interrelated. There's a debate in society that centers on the causes of social problems, who is responsible for the social problems, and the solutions to the social problems. So if you've ever thought about any kind of social problem, you can break it down into these areas in which society centers the debate on, right? So what are the causes, who's responsible, and what can we do about it? What are the solutions? Oftentimes we become really polarized within our society in regards to how we think it should happen. We have a two-party political system. Often we talk about having conversations across the lines or across the parties. So when we think about a social problem, we need to also think about how they're interrelated. In a couple lectures, we're going to talk about the matrix of domination and how power and oppression are interrelated to social problems. But first, I want you to think about going back to Sociology 101, right? What is a social issue, or what is an agent of socialization, and how does that influence a social issue, right? So when we think about, again, agents of socialization, those are systems or constructions that condition us to be socialized, to come to know what we know, how we know it, and why we know it, right? So if we think about the ways that social problems are interrelated, we can see that if there is gender discrimination, it's also interrelated with racism, and it's also interrelated with classism, it's also interrelated with ableism. We can see how they're all interconnected because having those systems of oppression being interconnected allows them to perpetuate. Do we follow along? All right, let's continue going. If you don't quite understand this idea of social problems are interrelated, don't stress. We're going to get to it a little bit more when we talk about power and oppression. So just hold tight. I want you to just kind of start to stew or think about it. So social problems are conditions that affect the quality of life of a large number of people. They affect cherished values and can be remedied. So other approaches to the study of social problems, right? So these next ones are captured from the text or a text that I use, and so they might be a little bit blurry, but I'll read them to you anyways, and it's incredibly important for us to know. This one, hold on, I'm going to pause, and then I'm going to take my face away so that you can actually see a little bit better. All right, hopefully that fits a little bit better. So other approaches to the study of social problems. So we are going to really focus on the sociological study, but in addition to sociology, there are lots of other disciplines that if you go back to Sociology 101 and the sociological cousins, we can see that economics, history, anthropology, cultural studies, all of those interconnect with sociology. So other disciplines in the social sciences are concerned with the analysis of human behavior, and sociologists often draw on the results of their research. The work of historians, for example, is vital to understanding the origins of many social problems. The research of anthropologists on non-industrial and tribal societies offers contrasting views of how humans have learned to cope with various kinds of social problems. Perhaps the greatest overlap is between sociology and political science, both of which are concerned with the processes by which policies deal with social problems that arise in different societies. Here are brief descriptions of several social scientific disciplines whose research findings have a bearing on the study of social problems. Right? So again, when social problems are interrelated, not only are they interrelated with social constructions, they are also interrelated with how we construct our research and what kind of information we use and who's interested. Cool? So history is the study of the past, in case anyone was unfamiliar with history, whatever, right? However, historical data can be used by sociologists to understand present social problems. In studying homelessness, for example, historians would focus on changes in how people obtain shelter in society and what groups or individuals tended to be without shelter. Historians also can look at the historical lineage of homelessness in certain areas, right? So if we're looking at, let's say, homelessness within the United States, we can then take a historical look, right? Or look over the past hundreds of years, right? No more than 250, right? Because we're not that old yet. But let's say we look back at the last 200 years within the Americas and see how homelessness has changed and what social factors might influence that. Economics, presidential campaigns, right? Because when President Hoover was in the presidency, there was this economic issue, right? And so we went into the Depression and we identified that we had what we called Hoover towns. Has anyone seen Annie? You can relate to this? All right, so we'll continue to go on. Cultural anthropology studied the social organizations and development of smaller non-industrial societies, both past and present. Because cultural anthropology is closely related to sociology, many of the same techniques can be used in both fields, and the findings of cultural anthropologists regarding primitive and traditional culture shed light on related phenomena in more complex modern societies. An anthropological study of homelessness would then look closely at one or a few groups of homeless people. The anthropologist might be interested in how the homeless and others in their communities understand their situation and what might be done about it. Okay, this is not currently in your book, so don't worry about page 7, but we can also see that psychology and social psychology, right? Psychology deals with human, mental, and emotional processes, focusing primarily on individual experiences rooted in biology. It is more experimental than other social sciences, and understanding of the psychological pressures that underlie individual responses can illuminate social attitudes and behavior. Thus, a psychologist would tend to look at the influences of homelessness on the individual state of mind, or conversely, how the individual's personality and ways of looking at life might contribute to their situation. If we think of social psychology and sociology / psychology, right? So psychology really does focus on how one's individual perception of life is, right? One's state of mind and one-on-one interactions with their environment and others, with the base focus solely on that one person. While sociology looks at not only one-on-one interpersonal relationships and interactions with each other in our society, we also look at social structures. Do we follow? So social psychology then utilizes tenets from both psychology of looking at one state of mind and sociology looking at how people interact with society and how society interacts with people to create social psychology. Cool. So social psychology is the study of how psychological processes, behaviors, and personalities of individuals influence and are influenced by social processes and social settings. If you want a more academic way of looking at it. Okay, so economics study the levels of income in a society and the distribution of income among society's members. So then this is to understand how the resources of society, its people, and their talents and land and other natural resources can be allocated for the maximum benefits of society. Does that make sense? So they also study the relationship between supply of resources and the demand for them. So if you can think back to Sociology 101, you can also understand that this is what kind of theory perhaps is most associated with this? Conflict theory, right? Marx. Access to resources. We're going to cover that a little bit more. We should have covered that last time, but if you need a little bit more help, it's a foundational theory that we're going to use throughout this entire semester. So when economics are confronted with the problem of homelessness, they would tend to study how the supply and demand for different types of housing influence the number of homeless people. Political science again. So the poli-sci or political science study the workings of government at every level of society, and they therefore would be likely to see homelessness as a problem that results from the relative powerlessness of homeless to influence the larger society to respond to them. So now that we've gone over the basically social science cousins of sociology, let's get back into our foundational theories. There are 3 of them. We should remember them because we will utilize them throughout the entire semester and for our final projects. So, perspectives on social problems. We have functionalist perspective, right? So functionalist perspective is concerned with status, role, institution, and the role of the institution, right? So revisiting it, status is the position of a group in society. Role are the requirements or expectations associated with a given status. Institution is the stable structure of statuses and roles. And then the role of an institution is maintaining the overall function in society. That's how functionalist sees it, right? So an example, my status as an educator, right? That's a status I have, or teacher, and then the roles are all the requirements and expectations associated, right? So the behaviors that I'm supposed to be doing, whatever that may be. Does that make sense? And then an institution is the stable structure of statuses and roles, We say the institution of marriage, we say the institution of education, we also have the institution of government. Does that make sense so far? So then if we utilize a functionalist view to think about criminal deviance, right? And we're going to use criminal deviance to look at all of the major theories that we're going to use this semester. So a functionalist view of criminal deviance, we see that social problems as a form of criminal deviance, that crime is a threat to social order, and that punishment is the solution, right? So the social problem is, from a functionalist view, criminal deviance, right? So crime is threatening how society functions or the stability of society. Does that make sense? So then punishment is the solution, and its function is to create a consequence for criminal behavior, right? And a deterrent for criminal behavior. So then we look at social pathology, right? So social problems as social pathology. The view of 1800s to early 1900s sociologists, right? So this is an organic view of society and social problems, much like the human body is prone to disease and decay, so is the individual and society. Social problems as a violation of moral order. So when we think back to the stages of social development, right, one of them is the theological stage, and that theological stage identifies that social problems are rooted in moral issues, right? So violations or deviations from moral order, right? So it's good and evil, basically, within this construction. But they also say that the individual and society are prone to it, so to keep us from decaying or having violations of moral order, we have to have strong rules and consequences in society. Following along? So then we have social disorganization theory. Society in groups is a set of expectations and rules. Social disorganization occurs when the set of expectations fail. The breakdown in rules and the emergence of social disorganization occurs in three ways. Normlessness, where the rules are missing. Culture conflict, where there's contradictory rules. And breakdown, which is conformity to rules, is not rewarded or punished, right? So when we think of how this disorganization theory is constructed, we can see that normlessness, the rules are missing, you don't really know how to behave or act. Or you have contradictory rules where some parts of your community or some parts of your social world is telling you one thing, and then other parts of your social world are telling you another, and they conflict. And then the breakdown is where, yeah, you have rules, but it doesn't matter if you follow them or not, because nothing's going to happen. So within modern functionalism, building institutions, we need to recognize the problem and then the solutions to the problem through building new organizations and institutions. So really when modern functionalism is utilized to look at social issues, we see it constructing that we need to build new institutions, right? So if the institution of marriage is no longer working, how are we going to create a new institution or organization that might support different ways to help marriage or whatever intimate long-term partnerships support the functions of our society? Okay, we're going to stop here and we're going to get to conflict perspective on the next video, part 2. So I look forward to seeing you then. If you have any questions, pop them up on the D2L Peer Help Forum, and then if you are unable to find the answers there, feel free to email me. Cool? All right, have a good day and I'll see you soon.